Welcome, Rotarians and guests, to the 2017 Rotarian Eclipse Party. Very fitting today that we have Mike Koralewski from First Solar to speak with us. But before we get to that, I'm going to invite new member Mike George to come up for a reflection, and then new member Luke Ship to lead us in the pledge.
Let us pray. As summer nears its end, let us be thankful for the bounty it has brought us. The abundant sunshine has nourished our crops, warmed the earth, and powered an innovative industry in Northwest Ohio. We are ever mindful of God's plan versus man's desire of dominion over the earth. We must remember to steward the gifts you have given us and to give you thanks for the many blessings we have. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Mike, Luke. And special thanks to Yark Automotive for being our sponsor this month. Again, if you're interested in being a sponsor, please simply call the office. The months after the first of the year are open and available to you. Jay Morgan, can you come to the podium and introduce any visiting Rotarians? Or to the mic, please. Thank you.
President Sharon.
We'll start all over, okay, Jay?
Not a good start, right?
Both of us.
President Stacy, Emeritus, we have two visiting Rotarians today. Visiting Rotarians, please stand as I read your name and remain standing until President Sharon welcomes you. We have with us Milva Wagner and Amanda Brown, both from the Mommy Club. President Sharon, these are our visiting Rotarians.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Does anyone have any guests they'd like to introduce? If so, please come to the mic with your guests.
President Sharon and fellow Rotarians, I have as my guest today Bill Alexander, the president of GEM Energy.
Welcome.
President Sharon and fellow Rotarians, I have as my guest here today Todd Ahrens, the Toledo Museum of Art's Director of Development, and Candace Harrison, the TMA's Director of Marketing and Communications. As many of you already know, I will actually be leaving Toledo Rotary because we're leaving the area, where I am going to Madison to take a new position. But these two will be joining Rotary as the museum's representatives going forward. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
President Sharon, my guest today is Jeff Dempsey. Jeff is the president of St. Vincent Hospital, and prior to that, he was president of St. Charles. And Mercy is completing his corporate membership, and he will represent Mercy in our club.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome.
President Sharon, fellow Rotarians, my husband's guest today is our daughter, Bryn. School starts on Wednesday, so we're finding stuff for her to do.
Happy to have you, Bryn.
President Sharon and fellow Rotarians, I would like to introduce also fellow Mommy Rotarian and the new development director for Lot Industries, Milva Valenzuela Wagner.
Welcome. Welcome to all our visiting Rotarians and guests. Thank you for being with us today. At this time, this would be a great time to check in on social media, let everybody know you are at the Eclipse Party of the Toledo Rotary Club of Toledo. And after you've done that, I encourage you to shut your phones down for an hour and enjoy the gift of Rotary. This is the month of August, almost over. I want to remind you that this is Member and Membership Month. Remember that Rotary is the only organization in the world where you can connect with like-minded individuals, where you can be inspired by doing good in the world, and where you can really participate in transforming your community. So it's always great to share that wonderful message. Part of what we do at Rotary is the foundation grants that we give to the people in our community that are deserving. And so today we have an opportunity to give back to our community through your foundation. So this time I'd like to invite Judy Leb to the podium for a presentation to Judy Siebenek. I have to do the Jude. I just have to do it. A presentation to hospice. Thank you.
On behalf of the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation, it is my pleasure to present today a grant check in the amount of $10,000, which will be used for a new replacement sanitary pump for the Hospice of Northwest Ohio. Our Community Service Committee members, led by Chairman Jim Lehman, received the request, participated in the vetting process, and made the decision to recommend this grant to our club board and foundation trustees, and the grant was recently approved. So here is Judy Siebenek, from the Executive Director of Hospice of Northwest Ohio, here to receive her $10,000 check. Woohoo!
Dear fellow Rotarians, I am humbled and grateful for this gift from the Toledo Rotary Foundation, which will provide funds to replace the sewage pumps at our inpatient center on South Detroit Avenue. And I think we can all agree that sewage pumps is not a suitable topic for lunch. Hospice of Northwest Ohio's vision is to provide care and services that positively transform the way people view and experience end of life. Clearly, a functioning plumbing system is vital to our ability to meet this vision for the 1,200 patients and families who need inpatient hospice care each year. The Toledo Hospice Center is now 13 years old, and Hospice of Northwest Ohio is committed to maintaining the facility and the systems so that it remains a place of peace and comfort for our patients and families. Your gift will help make this possible. Thank you.
I'm sure many of you, like myself, has had unfortunately, the opportunity to have somebody at that facility, and you hear the passion that Judy speaks with, and the people who are there are also equal to that amount of passion. So sharing the gift of Rotary today is Clyde Scholes, who's been a member since 1978, and he's going to introduce new member Jason Kuzma.
You did have to bring up that date, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, you're older than me, you know.
I know that. Jason Kuzma, Library's Deputy Director, brings years of progressive librarianship to the Toledo Lucas County Public Library, as well as our community. He was recently selected as a Library Journal mover and shaker, and in 2009 was named an American Library Association Emerging Leader. He joined the Toledo Lucas County Public Library in 2015 and helped lead the library in a community-focused strategic planning process to guide the library's work through 2020. Prior to coming to Toledo Lucas County Public Library, Jason was Executive Director of the Metropolitan Library Council of New York. And before he became a librarian, he published a progressive politics and culture magazine called Clamor, and ran a nonprofit organization aimed at bolstering independent media across the country, Allied Media Projects. He now leads a team of public service administrators providing essential programs and connecting people with resources and services designed to not only enrich and transform, but also provide library service to our growing community. Please join me, Rotarians, in welcoming Jason Kuzma, Deputy Director of Lucas County Public Library.
Thank you, Clyde, and welcome, Jason. At this time, I would like to invite our extraordinary Executive Director to the podium here for an update.
Well, thank you, President Sharon. I don't know about the word extraordinary. That makes it really hard to keep up, but thank you. So, hi, everyone. I have just a couple, I think 4 announcements I want to make and some information I want to share before the eclipse, which is in about an hour, I think, something like that. You've probably, those of you who have signed up, you receive a text message on Monday as a reminder of what the program speaker is. Hopefully that's working for you. I just want you to know there may be a glitch. I'm not sure on my phone today. Usually it says maybe. Today it was Anthony, somebody I don't know. So I don't know if when you receive a text message, it tells you it's from Rotary or if it tells you it's from somebody named Maybe. But just so you know, we're working on trying to get that little glitch out. And for those of you that have signed up for that, thank you. Either way, you're either getting a text message or a reminder of what today's meeting is. So I hope that you find that helpful. The second item I want to mention, thank you all for your patience. I think for the last 2 weeks, maybe 3, whether you were here or not, you received a message that said, sorry, we missed you. So we're working on that. So we thought we had it fixed. Emily's been really doing a lot of background checking on that. Was it the scanner? Is it the system? And we really thought we had it all. According to everything we can see on the screen, only those who are not here should be getting that message. However, last week, everybody, thank you for letting me know that you were here, because I did see you. So today, I would just like to ask, if you do get that message again, you don't need to send me an email. Because, and here's why, I don't often, hardly ever, remember to scan my own badge. But Emily knows I was here, so she marks me as present. So today I made sure that I scanned my badge so that I too will receive the same message as you, so I'll know that you got it, and hopefully you didn't get it. So we hope we can get that squared away here real quick. Thank you for notifying us. Okay, so third. Several weeks ago, maybe in June, I mentioned that we would all have the roster today. So I am happy to let you know that we have 75 rosters today. So on the way out the door, you can check with Emily. I didn't put them on the table. We had a limited number printed. I will get more printed if we need that. Not everybody wants a printed roster, but many of you do. I know I often use 2. If you want a second printed roster, we can do that for you at a minimal cost. I think each one costs $10. And this is the first year we've done it differently. We had it printed at Kinko's, and we were able to upload everything. And you'll see that I think it has everything that you want in it. And there may be some things that you wonder where it went. So just talk to me about that. But additionally, this afternoon, what's new about this is that as soon as we print this, it really is outdated. We have new members coming in all the time. Committees change, and the people who participate. So what we're going to do is upload the PDF to something called Dropbox. Now, I don't know how many of you use Dropbox. So if you don't, you'll need to go to Dropbox.com and it's free. I hope, I've used it a lot. We use it internally with Rotary. And this afternoon, you will receive an invitation to view the file in Dropbox. You only have to do this once. I don't know if when you set it up, you have to set up a password, more than likely, because everything requires a password. But then you can go in anytime. You'll see this complete printed version, and you'll be able to access all of the member information that you may need. But everything is in there. And then we'll update that monthly. We'll notify you that it's been updated, and then that way you'll have current information with you and at your hands at all times. So thank you all for your patience, and thank you for everything.
So Kathy's working really hard to bring us into the 21st century with putting our roster now in a PDF form, which I think is great. So thank you for being persistent in getting that done. Bill Cook, you have a message for us from Community Services. Bill has been a member since 2009 and a very active one. Happy to have you, Bill.
Good. Thank you, President Sharon, fellow Rotarians. This is a pleasure for me. I work with the Red Cross, and we have a wonderful service opportunity for you. This is something the Community Service Committee has taken on this year. It's called Sound the Alarm, Save a Life. And this is national. We are going to be installing our 1 millionth smoke alarm for free to any homeowner that needs one, and it's going to happen this September through October 15th. And it's going to be hitting Toledo here. Northwest Ohio has been challenged. As you know, we've had a lot of home fires here. And we are challenged because we're one of the cities in America, one of the 100, that has to install 1,000 alarms in 4 weeks. And so it's a big challenge. It's a lot of households. What we're going to be doing, you'll see on the screens here, we're having rally points each Saturday from September 23rd to October 14th, and we're asking for volunteers. This is a wonderful way to get involved in the community, to give back. The recipients of these alarms usually are people that are low income or cannot afford to do it on their own, or there are a lot of elderly families also. And it's a great way to help out. The way you can sign up for this, two things. You can either do it online if you choose. It's soundthealarm.org. Or if you want to do old school, we have forms that Emily has, and you can fill one of those out. You actually become a Red Cross volunteer through the process. So it's a little more elaborate than just signing your name, but we do want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due later, and we want to thank you for that service. These rallies are going to start at 9:30 in the morning. And they're going to, we gather together. We'll do a brief orientation. I've done a lot of these smoke alarm installs myself. You go out in teams of 3 usually, and we work in conjunction with the Toledo firefighters. So they're going to be along with us with their trucks, and the guys will be assigned right along to walk with us. We canvass neighborhoods. And these neighborhoods we're going to go to are those rally points we showed before. Those are some of the hot spots in Toledo. They've identified for us the high-risk areas, and we want to make sure that we get the alarms where they're needed most. This is a great way to save lives. This program nationally has saved over 289 lives that we know of. We've installed about 900,000 alarms. We're going to hit the 1 millionth. The goal is to decrease death by home fires 25% by the year 2020, and I think we're well on our way to do that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. If you recall, when Rachel Hepner was here, she spoke about that program, and it really is a great way to get involved in your community, and you're talking about really just a day, and it would mean so much to so many people. At this time, I'm going to invite Bob Savage to come to the podium and introduce our speaker today.
Thanks, President Sharon. And thanks to Judy for timing this presentation from First Solar beautifully with the eclipse happening today, although that's not what Mike's presentation is about. Maybe he'll give a little bit on it. But I'm glad and proud to introduce Mike Koralewski, who is Senior Vice President of Global Manufacturing at First Solar, which means he is in charge of not only this facility here in Toledo, Perrysburg, but most of First Solar's other manufacturing operations. He's responsible over 3,000 people. He has been at First Solar since 2006, was at Dana Corporation before that as Director of Quality in the Commercial Vehicle Business Unit before he came there. Now, what Mike doesn't know is that the last person I introduced up here, I showed some pictures from their past. But what Mike does know, even though he's a little bit younger than I am, is that Mike and I have good mutual friends that he went to high school with. But Mike, I decided to spare you that today. I didn't bring up any of those pictures. But Mike's very involved in the community here. He sits on the executive committee for the Toledo Science Center at the Imagination Station. He's on the board of directors of the Ohio Foundation of Independent Colleges and sits on the board of directors at the Toledo Area Chamber of Commerce. Mike, as a graduate of Central Catholic High School, has his undergraduate degree in engineering from Case Western and his MBA from Bowling Green State University. He lives with his wife Jennifer in White House, and their daughter Caitlin is about to start her senior year at Central Catholic High School, and their son Colin is about to start his freshman year at St. Francis de Sales High School. And without further ado, Mike Koralewski.
Thank you all very much. I got really nervous because as I looked across the audience, I see a gentleman who gave me my first job out of college. I see one of my closest friends from high school, and about a half dozen other people that I have worked with or had dealings with throughout the last 20 years. So I got really nervous when Bob mentioned that. And I know the guy he's talking about, and that made me even more nervous about it. Thank you all for welcoming me today. You know, it's really neat how these things time out really well. Bob sent me an email about 4 months ago and said, when's the earliest you can get on? I said, I don't know, Bob, maybe August. So it's kind of neat how we're going to tie a little bit of solar talk today on the eclipse day. As we go into the presentation a little bit, I want to just touch on a few things today. One is just to get you all acclimated with First Solar and what we're doing around the globe. Number two, what's happening in the solar industry, how we're reacting to it, and then what's happening specifically in Perrysburg over the next few years. I think it's a really neat story that we have to share with you today and to share with the community and some of the other things. For those of you who don't know, First Solar is a 17 gigawatt company. What that means is that we've made a whole lot of power-producing panels, and those are capable of deploying into mainly utility-scale locations. We don't do residential, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we've sold about 17 gigawatts of power. For those of you who don't know, 500 megawatts is about a standard coal-powered power factory. So we've made, roughly 34 to 35 equivalents of coal-fired factories. We financed about $14.5 billion of projects around the globe. We are the partner of choice for global utilities. We do not do residential. We're economically competitive with fossil fuels today. For those of you who don't know, yes, solar does work. Yes, it is affordable. Yes, it can be a benefit to society. We also have the strongest financial stability and bankability in the marketplace today. If you look at our competitors across the globe, we have a very strong cash position. We continue to invest in research and development, and we continue to expand when it makes sense. We also spend the most money of all of our competitors in research and development. We'll talk about in a few minutes how that pays off over the last several years. One of the things that differentiates First Solar from the other competitors is the fact that we use a technology called thin film, which is different than the silicon wafers that you guys see in the marketplace a lot of the times. So we have to do a lot of that investment on our own without the use of collaborative in the marketplace. We have a proven energy advantage. So the neat thing about CAD-TEL across the globe is that typically, due to the way that it picks up the light, it wakes up early in the morning and it goes to bed late at night. So as you go throughout the day, your wavelengths change throughout the day, and First Solar's technology is able to stay awake much longer during the peaks and valleys of the day, which helps us produce a little bit better energy advantage than the silicon panels. We also have the lowest environmental impact across the company, or across the market. If you look at the way that solar is made, you want to make sure that you have a clean manufacturing process to do that. It doesn't make sense if you're burning a whole bunch of fossil fuel and creating a product that doesn't have a solid energy payback time. So we're very focused on that as well. We generate, our power has, once it's installed in the field, there's no carbon emissions, there's really little upkeep. It sits and it just looks at the sun and generates electricity very cleanly and affordably. We have about 5,400 associates across the globe. If you look at this slide, there's two gold-colored dots, and those dots are where our core manufacturing are today. The gold dot in the U.S. is obviously Perrysburg, Ohio, and the gold dot in the Asia-Pacific region is actually in a location called Kulim, Malaysia, which is outside of Penang. Malaysia is what we consider our high-volume manufacturing site. Perrysburg is a hybrid site where we do both core manufacturing and also all of our research and development and core engineering is taking place out of the Perrysburg site. So it's a very pivotal location to us in Perrysburg. The other dots represent where we have key development opportunities. So across the globe, we look at where we can influence and deploy our product properly, and those dots represent where we have significant strongholds with sales offices and marketing offices across the globe. Throughout our 5,000 associates in our core manufacturing locations, we also impact about 48,000 supply chain jobs. That can be across the U.S. or global. That can be glass manufacturers, packaging manufacturers, even to the people who help keep the facility spick and span as we work through it on a day-to-day basis. So it's a very large infrastructure that we work through across the supply chain. If you look at where we've deployed the 17 gigawatts of power across the globe, you see that there's a big concentration in the U.S. and a large concentration in Europe. When we started our commercial operations back in the mid-2000 timeframe, the Europeans had a very large feed-in tariff. What that meant was that they were going to pay you to put an alternative energy in there, and you'd get an additional money in your bank account for doing that. So you see that Europe is a very large stronghold for us. That fell away when the euro started going down about 5 years ago. With that, we had to look where else we could go across the globe. So one of the big areas that picked up was the U.S. market, and then also India and Australia. Those are the really big places that we're working right now. We've done a little bit in South America, and we're starting to expand in Japan right now as well. However, the U.S. is going to be the cornerstone of our business for the next several years. You look at some of the size of these factories. I'm going to highlight one in a minute, but we talk about not residential, and these are in terms of megawatts, right? So, a million times what you have on your little light bulbs at home and things like that. We don't do residential because we don't think it's feasible from a recovery and deployment standpoint. What we'd rather do is work with a utility and develop a power plant, very similar to whether it's a nuclear, a coal-fired, or any other type of conventional electricity, so that we get a better economy of scale. Rather than spreading it out across many locations, we can concentrate it. It's much easier to keep track of, it's much easier to repair, replace, or anything else that were to happen across the globe. One of the sites that I want to highlight is what we call our Topaz Solar Farm. It's out in California. It's actually owned by Berkshire Hathaway's Enterprises. It's a 550 megawatt array. We have 3 of these in the U.S. today. The neat thing about the BHE site is that, number one, it was actually an investment-grade renewable bond. So if people wanted to invest in solar, it actually got very high ratings. The thing I want you to take away from this photo is that this is why we don't do residential. That's about 3 by 2 miles long by wide, so 3 long, 2 wide. It's a very large plot of land. There's about 9 million solar panels packed in there. We built it in about 18 months. To do that much impact on the environment and hit residential homes where you're putting 10 to 20 on a rooftop, you just cannot get there in the scale that it needs to be. When you talk about this type of scale and you deploy it to a site like this, it also helps drive costs down, right? Because I'm not spreading people across the U.S. delivering 10 or 20 modules. I have a supply line that is directly locked into this site to help drive costs down. So it's very important for us to stay in this utility-sized market in the future. We believe that's what's right for us. That's not the right technology, or it's not the right answer for other technologies, but it works the best for First Solar. The thing that differentiates First Solar from the conventional marketplace is our manufacturing process. So if you think about the way that a conventional silicon wafer, and those are the ones that everyone sees on the roadside, they're either blocks that look like they're welded together in a frame, or they're octagonal shaped throughout the cell. What happens in this process, and if you look at the bottom of the slide, you start with what we call polysilicon. And what they do is they actually create the polysilicon and they draw that into an output ingot. And it's a very long cylinder, right, of pure silicon. Very expensive to make, very energy intensive to create that. Once they get this pure silicon, that usually goes to another location. And what they do then is they slice this very, very thin. They take that output wafer, Then that moves to another location where they start creating it into a solar cell. So they'll put different passivation technologies to absorb the electricity. They'll create cells so they can link them all together, and you can see what we call tabbing, and those are the lines that are going across that blue cell right there. Then you take about 72 or 68 of those things and you assemble them on a piece of glass. You solder them together. You put a piece of framing on the back of it, and you throw it in front of the sun, and you're good to go for a while. That takes about 4 factories to do, and from beginning to end, if you can do it continuous, it takes about 3 days. If you look at our process, what we do is we actually take a piece of glass from a supplier in Perrysburg. It actually comes out of a factory in Ottawa, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. We get that piece of glass. It immediately goes into our process where what we do is called semiconductor deposition. And what we do is we take our CAD-TEL, cadmium and tellurium compound, and we superheat that into a vapor. And what happens is that superheated vapor is now falling upon a piece of glass that is virtually heated up to almost its deformation point. So when you drop that vapor on top of the module, it forms a very homogeneous film. And then as you heat it or cool it, a very nice chemical and physical bond occurs between the two. All right, so very neat process. That takes about 30 seconds. Okay, so where they're developing the silicon module or the silicon ingot and things like that taking days, we do it in about 30 seconds in one machine. As that module now comes through our process, what we do is instead of making individual wafers and assembling together, we laser scribe our modules. So what we do is we actually take lasers and we cut through and create cells linearly across the module. And what that does is many things. Number one is that it helps us in power performance, and the fact that each one is now individualized as opposed to the panel having to function as its own. Each cell can work as an individual contributor. And then we do a final assembly and test where we put another piece of glass on top of it. We're a glass-on-glass laminate. We don't have a frame at this time currently. It's a little bit of a balance of system issue. Balance of system is the cost that you pay in addition to the module in the field. It takes us about 3.5 hours to go beginning to end in one factory. So 3.5 hours, one factory. A little more than 3 days, about 3.5 to 4 factories on their side. So we get a very good economy of scale in our depreciation and our capital assets, which makes it very easy for us to expand across the globe as need be. No matter what technology you use, the core basics of solar are the same, right? Sun creates photons, right? That's the energy source that comes off. When it hits a piece of glass, there's 3 things that can happen. It either bounces off and is reflected, it's either absorbed into the semiconductor layer of the module, or it passes through. Obviously, what we want to do is keep as much of that trapped inside and absorbed it. If you look to the other diagram on this, it's a very simple process. Whatever your semiconductor is, and you can see that atom of your compound, the photon simply hits the outermost shell electron, excites it, that electron falls off, gets captured by a metal conductor and filters out through the process. They all collect, and you have electricity. Very simple process when you really think about it to the basics. No matter what technology you use, whether it's crystalline silicon, whether it's CAD-TEL or thin film, it's always the same process. Sunlight accepts an electron, electron creates electricity. Simple. Here's what's neat about our module and a little bit different. Number one, as I talked about it, we're a glass-on-glass module. That means that all of our core technologies are sandwiched between 2 pieces of glass. We do that for 2 reasons. One is that at the time, it was a very cost-effective solution. It fit our size profile. And it also, when you have 2 similar materials as they go through the heating and cooling out in the sun and the weather, they move together typically. They have very similar heating coefficients. When you have dissimilar materials, they heat and expand at different rates, which creates potential failure modes in materials. Our front substrate glass, as it comes in, we talk about that has a window layer that allows as much light into the semiconductor as possible. Then we talk about the semiconductor. And that semiconductor, what we use, as I've talked, is cadmium tellurium. It's a CAD-TEL compound. It is not elemental cadmium. It is not elemental tellurium. It is a compound. So cadmium tellurium compound is significantly different than those two elements on their own. It's a benign product. They're actually both byproducts of the mining industry. After you put the semiconductor on, you actually have a metal conductor, because once you excite the electron in the semiconductor, you got to get it out. You usually use metal to get that out, right? We all have the copper wires. We all have silver and things like that in our homes. We then have a piece of laminate that holds the back glass to the rest of the sandwich, as we like to say. I want to spend a little bit of time on the semiconductor because I think it's very important, and this is the core to our business. If you look at this graph, or this chart, the human hair is about 100 microns thick. Okay? I'm going to back up for a minute. When we talk about our laser scribes, and when we scribe our cells, our laser scribes are about 50 microns apart from each other. The closer we make our laser scribes together, the more efficient our panel is. So we have about 50 microns of space between our scribes. The 100 micron hair is about the thickness of a conventional silicon module's use of their semiconductor. All right, 100 microns thick. Not a lot of hair, right? If you look at where we are on the far left at about 3 microns, that's the amount of semiconductor that we deposit onto our panels. So we have to control a 3 micron thick process on a 2'4" piece of glass, maintain it at a very tight tolerance to ensure that it doesn't get thick or thin in different regions, because it obviously creates hot spots or dead spots in your cell. So it's a very, very tightly controlled process. I put this up there for 2 reasons. One is that it shows you the amount of thought that goes into our module development. What we want to do is we want to decrease the amount of semiconductors. Those are all natural resources in the field, in the earth, right? We don't want to. We're creating solar energy to help create, fossil activities to remain, in the environment and not have to exert them from the Earth's core. We want to do the same thing with our elements, right? So we want to use the least amount as possible. So we've been very good, very successful, using about 97% of the semiconductor material that our competitors use. But this also helps with its cost. If you use more, it costs less, right? Very simple economics there. So that's what we do on the semiconductor side. But I just want you to continue to think about that 3 micron thick. 3% of a human hair is what we're controlling to in our manufacturing processes. So if you ever get the chance to go see the manufacturing process at First Solar, it is. I've been manufacturing my entire career. I love it. This is one of the sweetest examples of American ingenuity that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. So if you ever get the opportunity, please do so. We talked about the ability of First Solar. Since we're so differentiated from the marketplace, one of the things that we have to focus on is how fast we grow and how rapid we can improve our efficiency. So what's efficiency? Remember before when we talked about those photons that come from the sun and they accelerate an electron, and that electron converts to electricity? The amount of sunlight that hits your module and then can actually converts to electricity is called your efficiency. So 17% of the light that hits a module is what 16.9 in 2016, or about 17.1 right now. But about 17% of that sunlight that hits the module is actually converted into electricity. You always want to make that as high as possible. Again, that helps drive costs down, and that helps deploy more energy in a quicker path. If you look at what we've done over the last several years at First Solar, and our competitors are the silicon line, so that's the blue and the yellow there. If you look at those lines, what it shows is very flat. And if you look at First Solar over the last 6 years, very steep growth. This talks about that investment that we've done. We invest over $100 million a year in pure R&D. Most of that is actually handled in Perrysburg, Ohio. So it's a huge investment in the market. It's paid off very well over the last several years. We were at an energy disadvantage several years ago. So now we're on parity with conventional silicon in the marketplace. So a lot of people think, oh, that's great, Mike. What does that mean? Well, that means is that we can protect jobs, we can continue to expand, and we continue to use the facilities in the U.S. as a continued growth platform. So that's very important to us moving forward. We continue to invest in it. Obviously, you look at the difference between the research and the production efficiency lines. It takes time to get research into a manufacturing line. We're also one of the fastest ones at doing that. It takes us about a year to go from research to line at an offset, and we work very hard at that. So I've kind of given you what our core technology is. Kind of boring, right? I know I'm losing some of you here, but what I want to talk about is let's throw all that aside and talk about market dynamics and what drives solar, because that's a big piece of it too, right? You go back to the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s. You know, the ho-hum on solar: will it work? Will it won't work? And things like that. Well, now, as we talked about, we have the cost where it is, where it needs to be, and we've done that through a lot of innovation and science, right? That's the first part that we just discussed. And if you don't believe me, call me. I will take you and show you my manufacturing line, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So let's talk about market factors, especially what's happening today. The market continues to grow. There's a few things that are happening, though. Number one is that China is always the elephant in the room when you talk about anything from a cost standpoint, manufacturing, in particular from a solar standpoint. They are the biggest single user of solar right now in the world. They also have the biggest concentration of solar manufacturers in the world in their country. What they've done over the last several years is they can play with their internal feed-in tariffs. So that's the money that you get for installing solar if you're on a government subsidy, which we at First Solar do not agree with. We actually want it to stand on its own. We do not want subsidies on solar. If you think about what China's done over the last few years, they've played with their feed-in tariffs to allow their manufacturers to create cash. So they'll give them a government feedback, basically a loan to continue going. Then they export their product across the globe at a very low rate. Then when they get into financial difficulty again, the Chinese government will increase their local feed-in tariff. They'll supply internally to China till they get back on their feet, and then they'll flip back out. It's a very common circle, and actually what we're going through right now, and I'll show you a graph in a minute, is that in the second half of 16, China declined their feed-in tariff, which means that there's more product going to the rest of the world. When they did that, along with some changes that we made in the U.S., it created a glut of supply. So there's an overabundance of supply right now in the global market, more than 20 gigawatts, so more than 40 coal-fired furnaces of solar are actually on the market today, more than what the demand needs. And what's funny is that the competitors continue to ramp. That means they're adding more capacity. And why are they adding more capacity? And they're adding more capacity because they have to get to a lower cost structure. Usually in manufacturing, the more product you can make, the more leverage and economy of scale you can create and drive your costs down. So that's one of the things they're doing right now. They're also changing to a more effective, efficient module over the next couple of years. So that's changing some of their core technology as well. On the pricing side, when you have low demand and you have high supply, that usually drives costs down. Costs down. So what we've seen is the global average sale prices actually dropped 30% in 2016 alone. So we went from about 60 cents at the beginning of the year to close to 45 cents at the end of the year. That's a huge impact when you're selling on pennies, decide whether or not you're profitable or not. The U.S. is actually even more catastrophic on a drop in the fact that with the dumping of the U.S. and the competitive market in the U.S. from a power provider standpoint, you have to get down to pennies on a kilowatt hour. I think in this area we pay 5 to 9 cents a watt depending on what type of, or kilowatt hour depending on what you're at. That's where we have to be on solar. So to do this, the prices dropped very low. In some levels below what's economically feasible, right? You can't make money at it. So we have to watch that very carefully. This is what it looked like. This is our life over the last 6 months, or last year and a half. So December 15, we started about 55 cents a watt. We dropped at the end of the year to right about 40 cents. Now we're down to about mid-30s. When you have this type of action that occurs in the marketplace, it drives you to make significant changes in your business structure. So many of you are aware that in November of last year, we had to do a significant reduction of our workforce in Perrysburg. We reduced about 450 associates. The good news is many of those associates now have jobs. The job market in Toledo is one of the best things going for us right now. But you have to make changes in your structure, right? You can't continue to live with that drop and not knowing when it's going to level out or when it's going to decline again or even increase, hopefully. So we had to make some very drastic decisions over the last year and a half. What we came up with is what we call our Series 6 module. So if anyone's ever seen a First Solar panel, it's basically a 2-foot by 4-foot piece of glass sandwiched with another piece of glass, and that's what it looks like, piece of black in between. What we've gone to is to say, how can you get a better price and a better cost control? And what we've said is you need to make it bigger. Right? Bigger is better in our scenario because it doesn't matter. The same number of people make a big module. The equipment's very similar. So we said, all right, let's make a big module. Let's make a 6-foot by 4-foot, 3.5-foot module. So that's what we did. We said, okay, we're going to do that. What does that mean? Well, that means that every piece of equipment in my manufacturing line has to be replaced. We have spent billions of dollars installing equipment across the globe in Perrysburg and in Malaysia. That's a very tough nut to swallow as you're looking at this. Many of these factories are less than 10 years old, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. So that bigger form factor does two things. One is that it's about 3.3 times the size of our current one, which means every time you install one of these big ones, it's equivalent to installing 3 of the other ones. So now I have an efficiency in the field, right? So I don't have to put 3 in, I only have to put 1 in. So I can save some cost there. The other thing that it does is that it allows us to rethink all of the processes that we've done over the last several years. When we started up back in 2005 on our commercial process, there were a lot of unknowns at the time, and we've done a lot of bolt-ons and add-ons and things like that that are inefficient. It's time to clean house and make things right. What this does for us, though, it creates a little bit of an issue. And if you think about it, if we can go to the what it does for us is that we have to hit a manufacturing cost of about 40% of the Series 4. We have to do it in 1 year. We have to flip a plant in 1 year. It's a lot to do. So what we thought about. And today, if you can think about it and put on your glasses for a minute as we flip to the next slide, I think everybody has solar module glasses on their desk or solar eclipse. Seriously, put them on. You're going to need them for the next slide. Hopefully you can't see anything. That's good. That means they work. So this was a test to make sure that when you take those outside today, that they'll work for you. Thank you for helping us do that today. We appreciate it. We had to wrap it in somehow. But I actually do want to talk a little bit. We actually view it as a solar eclipse, and we talked about this for our business. The market's going down. We have to lay off people. We have to reconfigure our entire manufacturing lines, basically start from ground zero and redo it. It is an eclipse for us, right? We had a very good run. There's something blocking our future, and we have to get past that very quickly. So what does our solar eclipse look like? This is Perrysburg, Ohio, December 2016. This is Perrysburg, Ohio, May 2017. This is Perrysburg, Ohio, August 2017. It goes fast, just the eclipse is going to happen today. It was the absolute right thing to do, but it's a lot going on. Right, you think about that change that we had to make, and there's a lot of great people who have built this technology for us and allowed us to do that. We're doing the same thing in Malaysia at the same time. We're also doing a greenfield, so a brand new facility in Vietnam at a 3-month lag to this. So we've got 3 plants going on at the same time through this types of process. It's a lot to handle from a manufacturing, supply chain, and people motivation standpoint as well. Right? There's a lot going on there. But it's very exciting, especially for Perrysburg, Ohio, as you see that change. This is our first tool. This is our main tool. When I talked about that coder, that deposits that semiconductor, this is what it looks like. And I want to put it in scale for you guys. We talk in terms of buses. Okay, so that tool is about 4.2 buses wide, and it's about 4.5 buses long. All right, so you're talking 53, about half, a little over half a football field long. We have 3 of those in Perrysburg. We have another tool set that's longer than this at about 70 meters long. So we're trying to put a whole bunch of stuff in a little box, right? And it's really entertaining to watch the engineers try and fit this school bus through a door that was meant to fit a Volkswagen. But you talk about the scale and the enormity of the equipment. I walked the line the other day, and it's pretty funny to look at, and I just had to stand on my tippy toes to look inside. And before, I was looking at it at waist level. There's things that change, but it's the right thing to do for the market. Here's some good news, right? We stopped our production in Perrysburg of 4 of the 6 lines in December of 16 to make the change. On track, we did it. We began our Series 6 tool installation in July, right on track. We'll have our front end operational at the end of this year, and we'll start full production ramp in mid-2018. So things are going very, very well. And I can show this same slide for Malaysia. That's doing the exact same thing. So here's the takeaway that I want to leave you with. One is that we're doing the right things. We had some difficulties at time, as did every other solar manufacturer in the U.S. We have over 750 associates in Perrysburg. Of those 5,400, there's still 750 associates in Perrysburg working every day to produce power. That campus, if you look at it, is about, there's actually 5 buildings on that campus. We have over 1 million square feet of floor space. And the most important thing is that Perrysburg continues to maintain its core function of being a hybrid manufacturing R&D located. It's been its foundational value since day one for solar, way back at its infancy, and it's going to continue to do that, which is a great testament to the workforce that we have in the area, because it's been really easy to change that as we go through this change. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
I'm blinded by the light. Thank you very much. I'm Doug Neckers. I was founder of the Center for Photochemical Sciences at Bowling Green State University and still am the McMaster Professor Emeritus there. So I thought about solar energy for as long as I knew Harold McMaster. I have 2 comments and then I have a question. The first is you missed a very important point about the eclipse today, and that is that the eclipse in 1919 was the eclipse at which Sir Arthur Eddington and Frederick Dyson observed on the island of Principia. We're Stocking. On the island of Principia, that light was bent by the sun as it passed by, therefore proving Einstein's theory of relativity, which had been postulated in 1915. But the other thing that you missed was 1905 was the Einstein law of photochemical equivalence, which is what he won the Nobel Prize for. He didn't win it for relativity. The great series on National Geographic over the last 12 months has been really beneficial to those of us who want to understand the Einstein history. But the comment and question then is this. You're hiring a lot of research and development people, presumably. And Dave Eaglesham was also a friend of mine. He said, well, I'll just go to Stanford, and I go to Caltech, and I go to Berkeley, and I bring them back here, and we make them work. How are you doing with the local universities? How are the local universities doing in supplying technical, not workers in the field, but technical supply to your research and development initiative?
Yeah, so great question and great comments about the backdrop of the eclipse and its impact on solar. If you look at what we've done over the last several years, we actually haven't hired a significant number of R&D associates. We actually have a core number that we've stuck with over the last several years. I will say that if you look at our engineering core that we have today, many of those are actually coming out of the University of Toledo. We have some that are coming out of the Mechatronics group at BGSU for the robotics and control side of the business, but we're not doing a substantial amount of hiring. We just reduced our workforce by 450. Hopefully I got it to the right number and we don't have to do a whole bunch of hiring over the next several years. As we expand, I'd like to do that, but right now it's not the right time. If you look at what we hire in an R&D perspective, there are very specific tasks that we look for, areas of expertise. If we have that area of expertise locally, as we look, we have a very good relationship with UT right now. If we have that ability to do it at UT, we take advantage of it. If not, we have to look elsewhere to entice that. So great question. We actually have we have assigned one of our senior lead scientists to work hand in hand with UT right now. We actually donate a lot of old technology and modules to them to help encourage them to get involved in CAD-TEL, which is different than the majority of the marketplace, as you know. So we're working in small steps there. It takes time to build that up, but hopefully in the next 5 to 7 years we'll see something beneficial. It does take time to build that type of expertise up in the area.
I want to thank you for your presentation. I'm sure we're all proud here in Northwest Ohio to have such an important global alternative energy company in our midst. So I want to congratulate you on that. My question is, in about an hour's time, the product that you have will compromise the end product coming out of your product. And could you discuss a little bit storage of the end product, i.e. electricity coming out of yours, and what's going on in technological development in the storage ability of electricity?
Yeah, great question. So the question is relating to storage on solar. Number one is that if you look where solar was about 20 years ago, the whole bunch of advancements occurring very, very quickly, that's where storage is at today. There's no specific technology that's out there that is the end-all, be-all. It continues to be developed. From a First Solar standpoint, where we're working on is looking at a portfolio of different providers. We're not developing it ourselves. We're looking at those who are better suited to do it on a day-to-day basis. And as that technology starts to split itself out to the ones that are going to be more beneficial, we'll work on it. There's not a lot of storage deployed in solar today. So as you look at what is going to happen in about an hour and a half, our sites will lose power. Right? Depending on where you're at geographically, they will lose power. So how do we compensate for that? Well, it's the same way we compensate for power in the nighttime. Usually what you have is you have a high-efficiency gas peaker plant that comes on board that helps ride through these issues. With the larger arrays, it's a little bit more impactful. And we've had to create we've been working on this for years, right? So we have a group in an operations and maintenance team that's been working for years, specifically in California where the grid is so unstable right now, and helping to add to it to make it more stable over the next couple of years. So.
My question is, you had spoken about your environmental impact and kind of how you account for that. The San Luis Obispo field you mentioned is about 6 square miles if my math works. Not a lot of 6 square mile open territory in the country. So where do you see that feeding into the ability for these large fields in the future?
Yeah, that actually goes into LA County. Is where that power transfers into. That's Bureau of Land Management land. It's basically a desert that they did not feel could be developed at any time. So we work with the BLM to identify those plots of land that we can develop and create into it. There's a lot of work that's done from protecting animals and to maintain the soil integrity as well in those sites as well. We have a very large team dedicated to that. But
2 more comments. One is on that. Harold McMaster thought about parking lots in Southern California. But the other thing is storage. Harold spent a lot of money on the reduction of nitrogen to ammonia with light. That, of course, is the Haber process that leads to fertilizers all over the country. But it's not done photochemically. He proved that it couldn't be done, as a matter of fact. So the storage issue is one that's really important, and I think that's where research and development initiatives could pay off in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Really, special thanks to Mike for sharing with us the impact of First Solar, both locally and globally, and for being game about the glasses. We got a hold of him and said, hey, what can we do here? We wanted to make sure you all had glasses as you leave here, or you want to go to the metro parks, but you can save those glasses because I did find out that in 2024 will be our next eclipse, and Toledo will have 100% instead of 85%. So thank you for being our speaker today. As a thank you, we'll be giving a donation in your name to the Polio Plus Foundation, Rotary. Just heads up, there's 9 cases of polio still in the world today, and we continue to fight that battle. Next week, we have Mike Abrams from the Ohio Hospital Council with us, and there is one meeting today for the TRCF Executive Committee meeting, and I know that there's an international services on the 24th, which Kathy is hosting. And with that, I want to make sure that I say thank you to Judy Leb and to Judy Stevenik for both being good Rotarians, but also serving as a foundation trustee and our program chair this year. Thanks to our TRAV team, as usual, great job. The park-in staff, Kathy and Emily do a great job every single Monday. It makes our meetings very much a success. And as promised, I always like to send you off with a smile. So Chuck. Oh, this is going to be bad today, guys, so be ready.
Tom? Here are, from Boys Life magazine, 6 quickies that celebrate the day. Why does a moon rock taste better than an earth rock? It's a little meteor. I know. Why didn't the sun go to college? Because it already had 1 million degrees. Did you hear about the new restaurant on the moon? The food is great, but there's just no atmosphere. The boy asked, Dad, can you tell me what an eclipse is? The dad says, no, son. How do you organize a solar eclipse party? You plan it. And finally, how does the man in the moon cut his hair? He clips it.
I told you they'd be groaners today. Thank you, Chuck. Thanks to all for coming. I encourage you to go out and make a difference in the world today.